Welcome to Cozy Reads Publishing, a podcast for the avid reader and exceptional writer. Tune in to hear exciting discussions about new authors, book launches, reviews, editing, and even readings from new books. So get cozy in your favorite reading nook and enjoy the show.
Hi, I'm S.J. Turner, author and owner of Cozy Reads Publishing, and joining me is my co-host and brilliant science fiction author, Dorian Keys. Say hi, Dorian.
Hi, everybody. This is Dorian Keys. I'm happy to join you today in this podcast. What are we going to talk about today, S.J.?
So I kind of thought that we would talk about the idea of writing. How do you write? Are you a plotter?
I think I've read these definitions on posts and blogs and stuff like that, and every time I read these definitions, I kind of feel that it brings to my mind the concept of if a millipede would think about walking, he would be kind of like stuck in place because he's too much focused in his 1,000 feet, right? Trying to walk. I don't know. I might just blend all of them together, maybe in my head, maybe in the definition. But I don't think I do any of them exclusively. How do you write?
I don't plot, to be honest with you. I kind of run off the seat of my pants, so I guess I'm that pantser type. I don't guess, I know. I'm definitely not a plotter. I go with what comes to mind.
Right, and again, we're talking about fiction. And I write science fiction, and you write other forms of fiction, but these are all fictional stories and science fiction. So
I would assume that if you're writing nonfiction, then definitely you'd be doing some kind of a plot line out because you would have to be following, the storyline, right?
Over the past year, I've been editing a nonfiction work for another author, and it was published this month. Now that was a departure from what I'm used to write and to read and to be involved with. It's not that I haven't read nonfiction. I've read plenty of nonfiction books, but to edit one is a different thing because they did. You can't change anything. You can't fictionalize. You could fictionalize a little bit, maybe embellish here and there, but you can't deviate from the story because the story is said this is a non-fiction story set in the real world, as they say, based on true events.
Right.
In that sense, when I got the script that the author handed me, the script was pretty big, sizable. And I was really happy to get the script, thinking of my experiences with my editor, that she says, she gives me comments and, I generally expand upon the script. And so what ended up happening was the script was non-linear for a non-fiction story. And as I'm reading through the script, I figured that the script was a little bit confusing to a cold reader, right? To somebody that's just going to pick up the book, to a person that doesn't know the author.
Right.
So in that sense, what I had to do was actually come up with a framework. How am I going to frame this nonfiction book? There are plenty of ways on how to frame a nonfiction book. You can go linear. You don't have to go linear. You can start with the end of the book and then, turn it all around. In that sense, right? So what I did was I took all the stories, I aligned them by date, and I did the thing. So I did it linear from beginning to end, one way down. I figured that would be the easiest way to describe the story to someone that is picking up the book. So I think in that sense, I plotted, right? I plotted the way the story was going to go, and then I followed that line.
But again, that's nonfiction. So, I mean, really, you have no choice. You have to kind of plot around that.
Right. So when I talk about the books, when I write, and I write fiction, it's true that all authors, in all books, there's a piece of the author somewhere hidden within. But generally, when I write, I don't consider it as plotting. Again, I do something else. I do what I roll the story in my head, and I know I call it roll, but I just keep thinking about it again and again and again and again, and I might do that for a number of days up until the actual story comes up in a fiction setting.
Now, when you're rolling this story, are you world building in that story? Are you character building? Are you actually plotting in your head? Is that what's happening?
Right, but that's why I'm saying that I don't think that I do any of this writing styles. Like, I can't say that I do this specifically and that's how I write.
So you're literally just thinking of how the next paragraph is going to play out, where the next character is going to appear, how the next character is actually going to respond within the story.
No, that's a little too small. I kind of tend to zoom out a little bit. I go more by scene. So if I have two characters on a scene and they're inside a room, and then on the next scene they might be going out of the room. So no, we're having a conversation inside the room, and then we'll walk out. Now, world building, that's something that I tend to do last, as with my titles and covers and everything else.
So it's not something that you do along with the story. So you don't think, okay, so my characters are walking out of the room. What does it look like beyond that door? Where are they? Are they just walking out into the living room? Are they walking out into the mall? Are they in a big city? You're not building the scene for the reader around them. You do that all at the end?
Right, but that's not for the reader at this point, right? That's for me. The first draft, and I'm only talking about the first draft of a short story.
Right.
The first draft, it's for me. It's just for me to know where this story is going. At this stage of the draft, I don't really need to know if the sky is blue or not, or what color this guy's pants are. At this stage of the plot, I'm only concerned with their actions.
See, I tend to put, well, I mean, I add details, further details, I guess, right at the very end, but I tend to put the detail in along with, as I'm going with the story. So I kind of do it all at one time as I'm writing. Maybe that's odd.
Certain. No, it's not. But see that, and that's the thing. That's why I'm saying that. That's why, I've heard this. I've seen these questions on social media during 2020, 2019, 2020, and I try. I mean, that was the first time that I actually thought about these, because it was never I never actually thought of okay, we're gonna write this way oh, okay, I'm going to write this way, and this story is going to be about a boy that's I don't know. This story is going to be about this character that is doing this thing, and he's going to go out and he's going to do that thing and that thing and the other thing, and I would say that's an outline, right? If you're going down to do the plot, then you're saying, okay, so chapter 1, title of the chapter. This is what happens in the chapter. Chapter 2, this is the title. This is what's going to happen on the chapter, and you go chapter by chapter writing them up until the book is over. I don't think that I have done any story that way.
Yeah, no, the chapters I tend to put in at the very end, actually.
I mean, I don't write chapter. I actually, yeah, no, you're right. I do the number sign that you don't really like much, but I like, when I end the scene in my head and I'm moving over to the next scene.
Yeah.
I don't generally, I don't name it. I just, I'm ending my thought and I put a number sign in there, and then I move on to the next scene. And that is the scene separation in my head on how I move from one scene to the other scene. And but on the first draft, I'm not really concerned. I would have on certain scenes would have descriptions. If two characters, and I remember this one scene that I wrote in Imprint Legacy, when he's having a conversation with Zeltier inside the hospital room. Like, I imagine a hospital room. And the thing is that, in my head, I imagine a hospital room, and then when I read the rough draft, I know that they are in a hospital room. So that would be like the second edit that, you have to come up with, like, okay.
You mean tying the scenes together? You start tying the scenes together then. So you write all separate scenes, and then you start tying them together in the second draft.
I would start adding more descriptions on the second draft, and then would be the first edit, and then that's where the real questions come up. Okay, what's happening here? What's happening there? And you start to add all the information that, I mean, at this point, by the time I finish the first draft, I don't know about you, but by the time I finish the first draft, the world is in my head. It's not on paper, but I mean, I walked with all the characters all along, right, till the end.
Mm-hmm.
And in my head, I know where they've been. I know they were in this room, they were in that room, they were in this location, they were in this location. You don't do it this way?
No.
How do you do
I said, I mean, I basically build the entire scene as I write it. So, I mean, yeah, I'm with each character. I'm with them in that room, but I give the full detail. What if there's flowers sitting along the edge of the roof, then they're there right there from the get-go. I may add more detail at the very end, but or even as the drafts go, I may add more and more detail. But I definitely start adding detail right from the beginning, right as I write. I don't just give a basic outline. In fact, I've never started with a basic outline. I just go right into the story.
See, in one sense, I think that I do my first draft is my basic outline, and but also my first draft generally tends to be at like 40,000 words.
True.
So I don't know how, I don't know. That's why I say I don't want to think about how am I going to write. That's why I brought that analogy of the millipede. I don't know if the real analogy is a millipede or a centipede, but it doesn't matter. It's a lot of feet, a lot of legs that are moving. So if I'm gonna start thinking how am I going to do this, I'm lost. I'm already lost. Just that's and how I always tell you, just keep moving forward. Don't worry about it. Keep moving forward. But the reason why I say that is because generally when I do that, I have a vague idea of where I'm going.
Yep. Okay. So So I mean, really, with your first outline, because I want to call it a first outline. It's a draft, but it really is the outline. So that's what kind of carries you through the story to take you through the remaining drafts, right?
When I finish the first draft, I have in
It's
my
very
head.
vague. Let's bring that up. It's very vague. Your first draft is very vague.
Right. So anybody that's reading my first draft, and you know how reserved I am about people reading my first draft. That's because there's a huge portion of that script is still in my head. It's not on paper. So for somebody to read my first draft, there would be a lot of reaching. There would be a lot of so I'm trying to tell the reader, you know what I mean, right? You know what I mean. You know what I mean. Like you should, like, you know, somebody's reading my first draft, I should be like on top of him, like, you know, when they raise their head, like with that clouded vision, is like, what did I just read? And I'm on top of him, kind of like shaking my head. You know what I mean? Or I should explain it. And that explanation would be what I have in my head that it's not on paper yet.
Right. So when you tell me to just pile through it, really what you mean is rough it out, right? Rough it out. At least put down a point form of where you're going, and from there, then you can fill it in.
I guess that the reason why I keep my drafts bare bone is because, as you know, I have deleted pages upon pages and chapters of my books, and I really don't feel bad about deleting them because I didn't put as much effort as you do, right? Because I'm thinking, if you write from beginning to end and you feel every detail, man, I would feel so guilty deleting that chapter because I put so much effort into it, right? So if I'm writing an outline and I'm like, this is just not cutting it, okay, just select backspace and just
So I mean, once you've put so much detail into it and you've really worked the characters through that scene, you're right. It's difficult to just delete.
I mean, I do try to salvage whatever I have if I have something, but I would not blink if I come up with like a better way of telling that specific scene or that specific chapter. I don't write in chapters. I generally write in scenes. So if I find a better way of elaborating on that scene, then just delete it and just do another one.
I have I mean, the fantasy novel that I'm writing now, I have several versions saved in a file on my desktop because I have restarted it probably 5 times. And maybe if I plotted it, maybe that wouldn't have happened. You know, so I'm kind of torn. Maybe I should have plotted, but I don't think that I would stick to it anyway. I know that I've tried plotting before and it just never worked. I ended up veering away from the plot anyway. So I resort to running off on my own and just carrying it through. But with this, I've never written a fantasy novel before, and I'm finding this extremely difficult to continue and keep moving forward. I keep hitting blocks. I mean, we've talked about a few spots where you're like, what are you talking about? Right? Where it's confused you. And then that's made me go back. I've had to go back at the beginning again and resort some of that stuff so that it's not confusing to the reader. So, and then of course you have to bring that all the way back up to where I am, and I'm at 40,000 words plus. And so again, I'm like, oh God, do I start this over again? Right? But I'm not. I'm pushing through.
So that's my thing. That's why I don't put too much information in the scenes, in the action scenes that I'm putting on. Because, you know, if we're talking, okay, you know, these 2 people, they got out of the room and, you know, they walked on the street and they crossed the street. At this point, I'm not really too concerned if it's raining or not, unless the rain plays a major role in the scene, right? and then I would
Right.
just write "It's raining," and then I would continue. I don't know if you've ever seen this one-liners that I put on my script, on my
Yeah.
drafts,
Yeah, I have.
and that's just my reference for when I come back for my second pass to be like, oh, okay, so this is why they ended up getting an umbrella because it's raining.
I mean, I
So I
truly
have to.
respect the way that you write because I envy it more than anything because I know I can't do it. I've tried. I've I've tried to mimic your style in that aspect, and I cannot do it. I need more detail in order to move forward.
Right. So we were talking about this yesterday, and I remember watching an interview
Sorry.
with Stephen King, right? How he came up with what's the name of that book? I already forgot the name of that
The
book.
Stand?
Not The Stand. Cujo.
Oh, Cujo, right, the dog. Yeah.
Right. So, and he says how in that interview he says how he came up with the story. He said that he brought the car to be fixed, and the mechanic had a big dog in there, and I don't remember exactly the entire interview, but that is not plotting at the very least. That is, he just came up with that story in his head right there and then based on the dog. So he had a visual and he had an audio um, stimulus in there, and he probably had something else because I'm not in his head. But that's not, he didn't plot that.
Well, I mean, it's hard to say without him in front of us, but I mean, it's plausible that he could have taken that scene that he, was there, that actual scene, and took that back home and literally wrote down points in order to get him started. So he could have outlined starting
right.
from that scene.
The reason why I say this is because a couple of stories that I've written have spawned from everyday interactions,
Right, real life events.
real life events, and I know I don't plot. I wrote that scene whenever I came back, and you know how I do this. Like if a scene comes to my head and it really sticks, then I write it. So many scenes come in my head, and some of them are not viable. So I don't want to hold all of them in my head, especially when I'm like in the quote unquote creative mode, right? If I don't have any major scripts in front of me, then my mind starts wandering, and I start focusing on like listen to music and stuff like that. But I wrote that scene right there, and I didn't write the entire story. Granted, I don't know how big Cujo is. I don't think I've read that book, but the story that I came up was a short story. A universe of our own, and this was a post a while back on a social media website.
Mm-hmm.
Together, you posted a picture.
Yep.
That picture right there and then spawned a universe of our own. I didn't plot that story. I didn't sit down and plot that story. I didn't sit down and outline that story. I just wrote it down. It wasn't exactly like that in the beginning, I'll give you that. But that
was
some
the
of the stories,
general nature of it.
right. Some of the stories that I write, they do come up like that. And I'm not saying this that I write like a certain author, because I don't really want to do that.
I don't think that anybody can sit down and say, I write like, I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't think that any author is going to sit back and say, I compare myself to. I mean,
no, but that's not what I'm saying, because the final product is not the same, because you can do the same process and come up with a different product. I don't write with what any of these authors write, although Goodreads compares me with Orson Scott, the author of Ender's Game. I don't
Oh,
think I
right.
write like
Yeah, right. I remember you
I
showing
don't
me that.
I don't
I'd
think I
like to
write
know
like this.
how Goodreads comes up with that comparison.
I don't know. It's probably based on other readers' purchases. Because
Or
I
maybe
doubt
what other
anybody.
readers that, choose your book choose.
Yeah, because I don't think
I
that
mean, I don't know.
somebody read it there and did that manually. All of that is automated, really. I think that's all automated.
Yeah.
But it hasn't changed. So it's still the same.
Now, so, I know we talked about this briefly, but so I seen a post. Somebody had posted, and I don't want to say their name because I haven't spoken to them about it, but I had seen a post on social media about a writing application, and it was called dabblerwriter.com. And so the idea is you plot out your story within, and then just from there, of course, you titled it. You can work out your world building separately, and your book scenes, your chapters, your characters' backgrounds, all of that stuff. And then I guess it kind of syncs it together, and from there, you just kind of fill in the blanks. So it's like I guess it's the way you plot out your story. Have you seen these?
I've seen quite a few writing softwares. If you Google, certainly Google is going to give you a number of paid and free writing software. I can't say I think I've tried one, and I found myself getting lost into learning how to use the software rather than writing, and that was like frustrating. I'm like, all right, let's just open a window and I just want to write something, and then okay, where did it go now? And I mean, yeah, I get it. It's I know how to use software. It's not complicated, but if it, I felt when I used that specific software, and I don't even remember what its name was. I don't think it might not have been what you're saying. Might have been something different. Um, but I think I used it for maybe 30 minutes, and I used it for 30 minutes because I actually tried making it work, and it was separating the scenes, and it was asking me put the chapter name or chapter number, and character names goes in this window on the left, and
Right.
character plots goes on this window on the right, and then you click this and you add it there, and I'm like, this is way too many moving parts.
It feels complicated, right? Doesn't it seem that complicates the whole writing thing even more?
Right, but see, so different people write differently, right? Just like I was saying it before,
Yeah,
and we're
sure.
just talking about it. So somebody might find like great use out of that software because they're organized that way, and that's great. But I mean, some parts of Pimp Legacy, I wrote them on a Chipotle napkin. I think I've shown you a picture way back in 2019.
Yeah, I know.
I generally write if I can write by hand, I'll write by hand. If I have time, I'll write by hand, and I don't have anything else. But if I'm using any type of software, Microsoft Word, straight words on a page, and especially if I'm drafting, they're even misspelled. And generally, like if I'm writing in the middle of the night and then I get an idea and I wake up, or I'm just about to fall asleep and I'm like, aha, this is how this works, or just quickly get up, turn on the laptop, and just like scribble it down, turn it off, and just go back to sleep. When I wake up in the morning, if I see that I have like those red underlines on Microsoft Word,
Yeah.
I know that I just quickly wrote something, and that's how my outlines are. It's just like there's a whole bunch of misspellings. I don't go back. I just continue going down. I know that I might misspell.
You don't find the red underlines irritating that you have to go back and fix them?
When my thought ends, I do go back. When my scene ends in my head, when I wrote what I have to write, I will go back and adjust it.
That might be part of my problem. I mean, the red underlines, they drive me crazy. And I mean, sometimes I write with Grammarly open. I write with Grammarly. And there's times when I really have to close it because it drives me insane. Because there's so many things that come up, like add a comma, I come back, add another comma. Like, all right, you know what? I've had enough. This has to close. I'll go back over
But I
this
don't use
next
Grammarly
time.
like I don't use Grammarly like that though. I do use Grammarly, but I don't use it like that. I use Grammarly on my third edit.
Like to come back and check overall, do an overall check.
Yeah.
See, I mean, so I don't want to say that I use it all the time consistently while I'm writing, because like I say, I'll open it up and I'll start to write. And then if I notice that it's pinging me too often, you know, you get these little side notes coming up and I'm like, all right, you know what, dude, I've had enough. And I have to shut the window because it becomes a distraction. Then I lose track of where I'm at, and it's not healthy for the story. It's not going to, I won't progress. I won't keep going. So in that aspect, you're right. I do have to come back to it later to go back through it, but I will come back to it like within, you know, a day or two and go back over what I've written. So it's not like it waits till the next draft or whatever. I do it pretty soon after.
No, for me, I wait till the next draft, and I remember when I sent the sequel to Imprint Legacy, the editor sent me some notes that, you know, at some point she goes like, "Did you even read back?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I did. I just, you know, I
figured that's what you were there for.
I read it and I adjusted it, and you know, I'm sorry, you know, I might have missed this one, and you know, the sequel to Imprint Legacy, I have so many characters in there that I did write them down on a paper. I still have them. I still have that paper in my bag. I think it's crumbled all the way in the bottom because I don't use it anymore. I had flashcards made for the characters, so because I had so many, and I couldn't keep up with that. So as I'm placing the scenes, as I'm piecing the scenes together, you know, stuff like, you know, if I'm focusing on what a character is doing and who the character is and so on and so forth, other stuff, I'm missing other stuff. And, you know, when the script grows so big, you can only pay attention to so many things. You need another set of eyes.
I do put a character's background in like a separate file. I don't want to say a separate file. Well, in like a separate Word document, so that I can just kind of flip it open if I, you know, tend to forget, or, you know, what color were their eyes, what color was their hair, that kind of thing. So I can resort back to that.
I don't. The only place where I actually did this was with Imprint Legacy, and yes, I did this with Morningstar too, but only because I didn't want
stories in there.
Right, so I have 13 stories in there, and I think on one of the stories, on I think the second edit, I used the same name twice on two of the stories, and my editor goes like, "Is this the same person that was on the other story?"
Right.
And I'm like, "No." So I had to pull all the names and make sure that no two people had the same name, because I didn't want to run into that. But that was the only reason why I actually pulled those names. With the characters, no, I try to keep them in my head.
So, getting back to this software, you've tried a couple of different ones?
I have tried at least one, and that one, maybe that was the wrong one for me, but that one turned me off, and I kind of I surrendered to the fact that, okay, I'm old-fashioned. I just need Microsoft Word with no other bubbles. Let me just put the words on the screen and as a first draft, and then the second draft, and then, you know, I kind of surrender to the fact that, okay, this is how I do it. This is how I'm ordering it in my head, and that's how it works, and it works for me.
Yeah, and you know what I mean? I guess, and especially once I pulled this writing program up today, I thought, you know what, I think the bottom line here is, I mean, it might work for some people, But I think the bottom line is that book writing software isn't going to write your book. That's the bottom line.
I mean, it's
really, you're going to write your book anyway. So, I mean, unless you're looking for a shiny new toy, that it's really not going to do much for you. Microsoft Word's going to do the same thing.
it's kind of crazy because I was on one of the websites I was visiting the other day. I saw this advertisement for blog post writing artificial intelligence. And what you do is you add a few keywords and you had your topic and you add this and that, and the software will write the article for you. Right? And a few people were happy.
How beneficial is that?
Right. So, I mean, if see, the world is changing, right? So.
But wait, does that classify you as a writer if you have an AI writing the story for you?
Who's gonna know?
Well, okay, that's a given. That's a given.
But then
wouldn't
again,
you feel guilty if you put this blog out and claimed to have written it, but really an AI had written the entire story and all you did was enter a few keywords?
Well, see, I think there's a difference in between blog writers and book authors. I actually looked up the definition of a writer and author, and it's not the same thing.
Okay.
Right? You know where I stand on this one.
I do. Tell us the difference. Tell us the difference.
Well, you know, a 5-year-old can write a word on a piece of paper, and that's writing. When you write content as a blog is writing, you are writing about a topic. A book author is writing an entire either fiction or non-fiction piece. That's at least my understanding of this. And I mean, take any blog and put it in a written form in a book. Would that be a viable book? I mean, I have seen cooking books.
If a blog
and I've
was
seen
put
cooking
into
blogs too. Yeah.
So okay, so I mean, some blogs are just kind of like news reports. So I think that there's so many different types of blogs now, and blogs are extremely common now. And I'm not going to say that I specifically follow one blog or another, but I do check them out very frequently. I mean, because just in a general search, typically blogs come up, right? It doesn't even matter what you search, they come up. Am I right or wrong?
No, you're right.
Right. That's how common they are. So, but in some blogs, you're going to find that, in fact, you know, a couple of people that we know together from Twitter write blogs about like their pieces of their stories from their books and their blogs, or they have them as blogs. So excerpts from their stories, or older books that they have brought out, and now they have a series, and they're 3-4 books into their series, and their first book, and they're calling this a blog. They're literally putting chapter by chapter out as the blog on a weekly basis. So those type of blogs too exist, don't forget. So there's all different types of blogs. So it's hard to really, I mean, how do you classify them? Right? Depending on the material that they're posting. Do you know what I mean?
I have read a couple of those, and
I mean, there's some blogs that are just about, hey, we're having fish for dinner. My cat's rolling around the couch, and I've seen those too. And those are just common everyday, hey, guess what's happening today, right? Those
Right,
are what
no,
I consider blogs.
I've seen those, and I've read a couple of blogs. It's just some of them are well written. Like you can make you can make YouTube videos out of those just by reading them. But they're not books, though.
No, well, no. But like I said, here you have this. Again, I can't say any names because I haven't notified anybody.
No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. This is
But
this
you
is
can
something that you can go on Google right now and search any topic, and a blog will come up.
right. But I'm talking about on a website, on an author's website, and they're calling it their blog, but it's their blog of their book's name. So let's say original release. And 3-4 books now have gone by in the series, and they're releasing their original book chapter by chapter. And maybe it's just portions. I haven't gone in depth in reading, but maybe it's just portions of each chapter that they're releasing within this blog. So I've seen that. And I've seen it from a couple of authors now. So that's happening too.
I have visited a couple of authors, yes, well-known and indie authors.
Mm-hmm. Have you seen what I'm talking about?
On the well-known authors? No, I don't see any blogs on the well-known authors' websites.
I have.
One thing that I did start, and I do have some of my thoughts that I put on a blog, and depending on your intentions, right? Because if you're intending to release your book chapter by chapter and attract readers like that goes into marketing. Maybe that's a marketing tactic that they're using, and
well, it could be a promotion for the latter books that are coming out, right?
Right. So that might be in the marketing, but then again, these authors that are doing blog posts about their books, obviously they're not using artificial intelligence to write the blogs.
No, of course not. Of course not.
So that's right. So that's
the artificial intelligence
right?
to write their blogs is ridiculous.
There's a real person that's writing. There's a real person that's writing this thing based on their books, and that is different. But there are only blog writers out there that are not. So you said that these are authors that are writing articles about their own books, and which is fine, or they're releasing like little bits of their book, and that's fine too. That probably goes into marketing.
I never actually looked at it that way. But you're probably right. They're probably putting that out there in order to draw enough attention into, hey, have a look, because there's a series that's following this book, which makes a heck of a lot of sense.
I think I remember the author that wrote the movie The Martian, the book The Martian. I think they did the same thing. I think that book took off on short excerpts, and they were very, very involved with the audience.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I mean, that does make sense.
So I think that falls into in marketing. But most of the authors that I have seen, and I'm not going to make names because it doesn't matter. I haven't seen any blogs on any of the well-established authors. Personally, it would cut on my writing time. I mean, right now that we're doing this, I just folded the laptop and I put it away because I was writing. And I'm sure that you told me that you were writing too.
I know.
So this what we're doing right now is taking writing time.
Right.
So to stop writing and doing this, it's taking away from writing time.
Right. But it's once a week. And I think that it's quite informative.
Right. No, it is. It is. I hope it's informative.
And I mean, we kind of touch on a bunch of topics all at once.
But so ultimately, I do write on like a bare software. I have the beginning of the logical conclusion, I
Mhm.
wrote it on my phone.
I know, that is so crazy.
So
And I told you, I tried to do that, and I cannot do it on my phone. I mean, I've written on my iPad, but mainly I'm stationary to my desktop. I'd like to ask and see, maybe, I don't know if we'll get a response. I don't know, how much interaction we'll get with these podcasts, but I'm curious to know how many people plot and how many, are pantsers. Are you curious to know that?
So you were telling me earlier that you took a class about this stuff,
Oh, goodness. Yeah, wasn't I disappointed?
right? But it's
We're
not
really going to
it's not
touch
about
that.
that. It's not about that though, because I have seen multiple ads on online that say, "Hey, take this creative writing course. Take this
Hmm.
creative writing course," right?
Careful. Yeah.
And there's college degrees now that they teach creative writing. Um,
Well,
I must stress that although I took intensive writing, and which is not the same,
not at
um,
all.
I did not. I took intensive writing with a purpose because I had to write my college papers, and I needed to break through that the intimidation that you have when you're sitting down and you're like, oh my God, well, where am I going to pick this up from? So in that sense, yeah, I have broken that wall that I can just like open the notepad on my phone when a scene comes up, and I just start writing. Initially, the first two, three, four sentences might not make sense, but if you go through, then it starts straightening up in my head, and then the words will come out a little easier. But going back to that, there's a lot of courses that I've seen, and I wonder if authors and writers are taking these courses, because that's the thing, right? I was reading an article, funny enough, on a blog that had concerns about this writing like softwares, especially Grammarly, Microsoft Word, um, all this like grammar checking softwares,
I do
and
like Grammarly. I have nothing bad to say about Grammarly. I think it does a
right.
really fine job.
So their concern was, well, they're forcing everybody to write a certain way, because as we know, Grammarly has a certain way with commas. It really hammers the commas,
Well, hang on,
right?
because with Grammarly, you actually choose what audience you're trying to address. And are you trying to hit a neutral audience? Are you trying to portray yourself neutral? Are you trying to be, um, what are the suggestions it gives you? I mean, there's so many different settings in there. So really, you're choosing where those commas should be. And Grammarly is just reminding you, hey, you happen to have forgotten this, and you still have the freedom, because it gives you the option even to be creative in your writing.
Right. So,
So it's it's a really good program.
well, no, I use it. I'm not knocking it. I'm not knocking it. I use it. I use it. But if I want to write a sentence
Hmm.
saying he really, really, really liked her, and I really, really, really want to emphasize it, Microsoft Word, Grammarly, and all your grammar softwares will
Yeah,
underline that.
of course they will, because
Why?
it's a repetitive word. I
And
mean,
that's my writing style.
right. And you have every right to go and click on it and to hit the trash. Sorry, but I'm not going to accept
Right.
that.
But the concern of that post, and I saw its point. I saw its point. I saw what he was doing. I know Microsoft Word has certain words that they don't want you to use. That it
You
will
mean
underline, not in red, but in the other underline, and it will give you a
in blue?
suggestion. Use this word instead of that word. Um, and one thing that I do, like when I write on my phone and I transfer it, if it's important enough and it makes it into a script, and I transfer it to Microsoft Word, I'll
Hmm.
have all sorts of like underlines, because obviously when I write, I'm writing on a notepad with no constraints, right? It's just
Right.
word processor at that point. So in that sense, that's how I put it down on paper. But Microsoft Word will try to make me use different words. And just thinking about this, if it's doing it to me, how many other authors are sounding exactly the same because Microsoft Word underlined those words exactly the same?
Okay, but again, you have every right to ignore the suggestions.
I know that.
And so how many authors are going, yeah, no, thanks for the suggestion, but I'm going to choose my own. And you have every right to do that. And with Grammarly, you also have your own dictionary. So when you post, when you write a word that Grammarly isn't familiar with, it asks you, do you want to add this to your dictionary? Right? So that if it does come up again, it won't bother you with it.
So would you consider Grammarly writing software?
I'm going to consider it a writing companion. Not so much a software, a companion. I consider it a companion. I think it makes me pay more attention. But do I consider it a god as to what I'm doing? No. And do I take every suggestion? No. I still keep what I want. I do accept some suggestions, but not every one. Absolutely not. But there's things too where it points out and I'm like, oh yeah, right. Never mind. Forgot about that. So it's a good thing to have. And I'm sure there's other ones. There's not just Grammarly. What's the other one too? Writing Aid? Pro Writing Aid? It's similar, but I tried it and I didn't like it as much. It's not as writer-friendly as far as I'm concerned. I mean, of course, that's just my opinion, but I never had an issue with Grammarly. I like it.
Yeah, I mean,
it gives you a lot more freedom. And there's more options for you to be able to, choose what kind of clarity you want, or what words you want to add to your own dictionary, and how you want to sound. And you can actually program it so if per character. So if you're coming in with one character and you want them to sound in a positive voice, then you can structure it so that now you're going to sound positive, and now your commas and stuff and what have you are going to be arranged in that aspect. And when you don't have a positive sentence, it's going to point that out to you. So you can do that.
That's too much change for me. I don't generally do that. I know it can be done. It tells me that, hey, we've detected
passive
different tones,
voice, right? Yeah.
Especially when I was editing the memoir, that I did the final pass with it. It sent me an email afterwards saying, hey, we detected a new voice tone, and I'm like, yeah. It's a different book.
And I get a lot of this is a passive voice. So because I've wanted to stay neutral, and then later on I'll go back and I'll just go through, one character and choose positive or negative depending on the scene, and I'll change how I want them to be, the clarity at that point. Then I'll go through the scenes for what I want there, and see what kind of delivery I've got going on.
Do you listen to music?
Yeah, I do, but my music is way different than yours. Mine's more soothing, calming, and it's really total backdrop. And I've heard what you listen to.
I mean,
I have no idea how you write with that.
I know one author that, at least, back when that author used to write and still writes, no sound, nothing. Like, you could hear a pin drop in the room.
Yeah, I can't write with dead silence. Well, I guess I can, but I find it more difficult.
I generally, yes, I do listen.
My mind sways.
I do listen to quite some different music styles
Different, really?
when I write, but they dictate the way that the scenes are progressing, at least in my head.
So I'll admit that sometimes you've shared a couple of songs and you say, okay, so this is for this scene. And I'll be like, oh, okay. No, I can actually relate to that. I can see how that would fit. But then sometimes you'll send something over and I'll be like, really? How does that relate?
In my head, it's important to, because you can't incorporate songs into books, the feel of the song has to come through the words or the action that's happening in the scene. I've seen a couple of like blog posts actually that, you know, they have like a song on top of the blog post, and then, you know, they write the scenes. Remember the authors that you were saying that they write you know, passages of their books and they put them on their blogs, right? So I've read a couple of them and they had like the song, and I understand. I know what this person was thinking because I kind of do the same thing. Like, oh, this song goes with this scene, and yeah, I try to listen to it, and it doesn't match in my head, but it doesn't mean that what I'm reading is what the author was writing. Remember how I said in the other interview that, you know, the reader reads something else?
Yep.
So in my scene, that song, that specific one, and this was one author, didn't match, but that doesn't mean anything. The author might have been listening and might be writing something else in their head, and it's the same with me. Like, you know, the song that I'm sending you, it has a feel, and that's like a really personal thing, I think. If I send you a passage and I send you a song, it's really, I'm going to go back to the thing, like me standing in front and on top of you being like, okay, Jay, I think it's about time to wrap this up. What do you think?
I have to agree, Dorian. It's been great talking to you. Don't forget to stop by the website, cozyreadspublishing.com, to check out the new books that are coming out. Dorian's new book, The Logical Conclusion of a Captive Mind. And of course, my books are up there as well, Contracted to Mr. Collins. And there's also a new author that'll be coming out, M.K. Newton. And I'll be posting him very shortly.
Well, thanks for having me, SJ. And till next time.
Thanks for joining me, Dorian.
That's our show, folks. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And be sure to visit cozyreadspublishing.com to discover the next best-selling authors. Are you interested in becoming a beta reader? Visit our website to learn more about how you can read the next bestseller before it hits the shelf. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.